Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord Christ.
Jesus began to speak in the synagogue at Nazareth. Today this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing. All spoke well of Jesus and were amazed at his gracious words that came from his mouth. They said, "Is not this Joseph's son?" He said to them, "Doubtless you will quote me this proverb, 'Doctor, cure yourself.' And you will say, 'Do you hear also in your hometown the things that we have heard you did at Capernaum?' And Jesus said, 'Truly I tell you, no prophet is accepted in the prophet's hometown. But the truth is, there were many widows in Israel in the time of Elijah, when the heaven was shut up 3 years and 6 months, and there was a severe famine over all the land. And yet Elijah was sent to none of them, except to a widow at Zarephath in Sidon. There was also many lepers in Israel in the time of the prophet Elisha, and none of them was cleansed, except Naaman the Syrian.' When they heard this, all in the synagogue were filled with rage. They got up, drove Jesus out of the town, and led him to the brow of the hill on which their town was built, so that they might hurl him off the cliff. But Jesus passed through the midst of them and went on his way." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Let us pray. May the words of my mouth, the meditations of our hearts be always acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, our strength and our salvation. Amen.
Amen.
Please be seated. Well, I want to start by giving credit where credit is due and just acknowledging up front that the idea for this sermon series, some of the big ideas, some of the phrasing, I've taken from another sermon series that I heard preached a little while ago by a guy by the name of Andy Stanley at North Point. I found the series very helpful and thought that you might find it helpful. Took it, adapted, developed it according to my own outlook and purposes, but some of the big ideas, some of the wording I have taken from that sermon series. So just want to say that up front. We're going to conclude this sermon series the way that we began it, and we are concluding our sermon series, How to Have a Happy New Year, today. This is the last in that series. We missed one of those sermons last week. That was going to be the sermon on the difference between happiness and pleasure. We'll just have to pick that one up somewhere else along the line. But as we close the series, we want to close it in the way we began it, and that's with a couple questions. Hopefully you get these questions right, because if you don't get these questions right, then I have to go back and preach that sermon as well as today's sermon, and we want to get to the baptism. So the first question is, what makes you happy? All right, you remember, very good. What makes you happy? Nothing, no thing. Happiness is more about a who than a what. Everybody needs a who or two. And then the second question is that same question, but developing the answer a little bit. What makes you happy? Nothing, no thing, but also sewing. Fantastic. You listen, I'm so proud of you. That's a beautiful thing. And what we said is we can't immediately access happiness. Happiness is an outcome that we develop over the long haul. So true happiness doesn't come from controlling circumstances in the short run, but it comes from cultivating what we want to flourish in the long run. So it doesn't come from short-term control, but long-term cultivation. All right? So we sow for happiness. And then that brings us to today, to our third principle. And this principle is, frankly, radically counterintuitive. I can just guarantee you that not everybody who's been here today is even going to believe me. Some people are going to think that I have a hidden agenda. And once you get beyond these four walls, very few people actually believe this at all. And yet, as I hope we'll see, this principle is backed up by just mountains of research. When you really think about it, you know this is true from observation, but you have to really think about it. And then when you really think about it, I think we all know this is true in here. But again, we have to take a moment and really think about it. And the idea is, and this runs counter to a lot of popular wisdom right now, that the basic idea is that you really are not enough. I am not enough. And so if your life is all about you, when you are all about you, you will not be happy. When I am all about me, I will not be happy. And the idea is that we cannot acquire, consume, or exercise our way into happiness. We're just simply not designed that way. So whether we're designed by God, whether we're designed by evolution, or whether it's a wonderful combination of the two, whether it's because we bear the divine imprint, or we bear the imprint of the DNA within our genes, or again, some wonderful combination of the two, we're designed in such a way that I cannot fulfill me. You cannot fulfill you. And what that means is though you can be the very best version of you that you ever hope to be, and I can be the very, very best version of me, can work on me so hard that I'm the very best version of me possible, that very best version of me, that very best version of you will still not be happy, because when all you are about is you, you will not be happy. And all I am about is me, I will not be happy. So I can be as fit can be. I can have all the money I ever wanted to have and more. I can have the house I ever dreamed of. I can take all the trips I've always wanted to take. But because all that stuff is about me, I still will not be happy. I can be as self-actualized as is possible. But actually, even the guy who developed the term self-actualization, Abraham Maslow, as he went on in life, he had this pyramid at the very top of self-actualization. He said, no, I got it wrong. Self-actualization really isn't what it's all about. There's still actually another level about that, and it's giving yourself away. So, again, a lot of people simply won't believe this. A lot of people just will think I have a hidden agenda in saying this, but you cannot consume, acquire, exercise, or self-actualize yourself into happiness. It just simply does not work that way. It's going against the grain of the universe. It goes against the way you were created and designed to find your fulfillment in other people. Now, what that means is, though we cannot acquire, consume, or exercise our way into happiness, you can serve and volunteer your way into happiness. Now, that's the part where I'm going to lose people. That's the part where people are going to say, okay, he's got a hidden agenda. He must need help. But that's not what this is about. And I know we won't convince people, everybody of this, but this morning I do not want something from you. I want something for you. And we say that with some regularity because I know people don't believe it. We do not want something from you today. We want something for you. I want you to understand something about real happiness lies so that you will be happy. And that I'll be happy as well. And so, believe it or not, while you cannot consume, acquire, or exercise or self-actualize your way into happiness, you can volunteer and serve your way into happiness. And if you don't believe me, Google it. Go online and just type in well-being and selflessness. Type in happiness and service. Type in health and volunteerism. Type in anything like that, and then just see what you'll get. And you'll just get a whole host of studies and meta-studies. And what meta-studies do is they combine studies. So you'll have 40 studies, 100 studies, 200 studies over decades, and they'll crunch all the numbers and come up with the statistical conclusions of all those studies. So you come up with a bunch of studies, meta-studies, books, TED Talks, maybe even an old sermon of mine or two, and they will all say the exact same thing. Is that on the base of just mounds of empirical research over decades and years and just great numbers of people, is that people who give themselves away, people who volunteer and serve on a regular basis, not just once or twice a year when the office does it and my boss will know if I'm not there, but when people who build this into their life, these are the people who have lower blood pressure, these are the people who have less heart disease, these are people who have a stronger immune system, they have a greater sense of well-being, they live longer. There's this huge thing called the Happiness Project, just the biggest project of its own, is all the conclusions. Harvard has done a massive study on this. Look them up, really. And you'll just see that they all say the same thing. We go to the gym because we think that's what's good for our health, and it is. I exercise like everybody else. I'm not saying anything about that. But even better for your health statistically than spending time on a treadmill is spending time volunteering. I mean, you'd think I'm making that up. Even better for your heart than not smoking. What's the best thing you can do for your heart? Not smoke, right? Because if you've ever seen all the gunk that comes off a cigarette, you don't want all that stuff in your veins. But even better statistically for your heart than not smoking, as good as that is, please don't smoke, is volunteering. I know, it sounds crazy, but it's true. And what they found, one of the meta-studies out of England, is they found that even for teenagers, and even if you force teenagers to do this, right? It doesn't matter if they do it with a good attitude or a bad attitude. They might do it with a bad attitude. But all that matters is that they actually volunteer. And teenagers who volunteer on a regular basis, even if they do it with a bad attitude, they actually statistically have significantly lower drug usage and significantly lower teenage pregnancies. So the evidence, the empirical evidence is just staggering on this. You know, there are very few things where the evidence is just so unanimous, so monolithic in its conclusion. And the conclusion is the same. But beyond the evidence, if we think about it, just think about observation. Think of the people that you know that are happiest. All right? Now, you might look at the people that you know are happiest, and you might say, okay, I wouldn't really want to be that person. They don't exercise as much as I do, so they don't look as good as I do. You know, they're not as fit as I am. But frankly, as fit as I am and as good as I look, I'm a little frustrated, you know, and I'm still aware that I'm not as fit as I'd like to be. And when I look at that other person, I got to admit that they've got something going on that I don't have going on. And whatever they've got going on, I want that to be going on in my life. So I wouldn't trade places with them because they're not as fit as I am. They don't exercise as much as I do. But I got to admit, they're happier than I am. Something going on in them that's not going on in me. And whatever that is, I do want that. You might look at somebody else's life and you say, I wouldn't trade lives with them. They don't make as much money as I do. They don't have the income I do. And frankly, I like the income I have. But when saying that, man, I'm irritated a lot of the time. I'm aggravated a lot of the time. I'm stressed out a lot of the time. When I look at that other person, even though they don't make much, even though they don't have much, they just seem to have something going on I don't have going on. They seem to have found a sense of peace that I don't have. They seem to just, man, I wouldn't trade places with them, whatever they've got, I want. And so we look at the people, the happiest people we know, and what do they have going on? They've figured out that if you want to find happy, you've got to be happy. You've got to find a way to give yourself away. If you want to be happy, you've got to find a way to give yourself away. And that's what these folks have figured out. They've figured out that the selfless life, that a life where people regularly volunteer and serve, which the sweet spot is 2 to 5 hours a week, every week, to be as systematic in our serving as we are in consuming, acquiring, and looking at ourselves in the mirror and saying, I got that going on today. I mean, we have to be equally systematic about our serving. Sweet spot, 2 to 5 hours a week. And these are the happiest people we know. Think about the people that you respect the most. For me, some of the people I respect the most are, and they found out, this is a University of Chicago study, the 3 most satisfying, fulfilling professions are professions in which people teach, protect, and serve. Those are the 3, those are the most, and income doesn't matter beyond a certain point. It's once it pays for your food and house, income doesn't matter whatsoever. It's whether you are in a position to teach, protect, or serve, which, you know, I've said before, this is why my dream in this congregation, when you compliment somebody, we wouldn't say that person is such a rock star. And we just strike that from our vocabulary. Because by their own admission, you know, rock stars often live very sorry lives of excess and dissipation. They contribute very little to the larger society. That's by their own admission. Why would anybody want that? It's my dream that, you know, if we wanted to compliment somebody, we'd say, you were such a nurse. You know, you were such a teacher. Or in my wildest dreams, you're such a pastor. But I really don't think that one will ever come true. So I don't. But again, the idea is that the people we respect most are the people who give back, who make the world a better place to be. And so, interesting, people protect. Policemen are actually some of the most, find the most joy in their work. And you might think, well, wow, that doesn't make sense. And it's sort of a sad thing that we come in this day and age where we often feel like we're at war with the police, or we feel like the police are our enemies. But speaking personally, one of the groups I have the most respect of all is for the police. And one of the reasons that is because I do ride-alongs with police officers. I go with them, and I see that the biggest part of their job isn't enforcing the law. It's just helping out wherever help is needed. I talked to a policeman last night, and I said, you know, maybe it won't be so much fun being a policeman now since so many people have so many nasty things to say with you and develop such. And he says, no, that won't change it at all, because for us, the best part of being a cop isn't writing tickets or enforcing the law. It's all the ways we get to help people each and every day. He says, that was make what I do such a joy. Nothing's going to change that. I think one of the police officers, our last service guy by the name of Greg Johnson, a local sheriff, and I've done a couple of ride-alongs with Greg, and I remember one of the ride-alongs, we spent the vast majority of the night simply helping a person who had some mental challenges get the help that person needed, that nobody else ever would have helped this person. But that's what and nobody even knows what this guy did for the whole night. But that's what he spent his nights doing that night. He spent it serving his community. Another group that I have utmost respect for, I think a lot of you do, are military folks. Military folks are people who give their life in service, their life of service, something higher themselves, and often at great cost to their friends and family. Some of the people I've respected most over the years, one of those was a guy by the name of General Seitz. You may have heard this before. He's a 4-star general. His eulogy was 4 minutes long. And that was by design. He said, I want my life to speak for itself. And if people don't know what my life says, no words are going to make any difference. They're just going to be hollow. There'll be no integrity of 4 minutes max. And his eulogy was 4 minutes long because his life said everything that needed to be said. You didn't know what his life said, then there was nothing that was going to be said that was going to change that. That's the way he wanted. I think of another guy, General Allen, another man, General Allen, a man who is one of the greatest men I have ever known, Joint Chief of Staff. And he actually flew a plane called the Blackbird SR-71. And if you know the Blackbird SR-71, holy cow, I mean, it's just like the most gorgeous piece of machinery ever made. It could accelerate at Mach 4.5, it could fly at Mach 3, it could fly from coast to coast in an hour and 8 minutes. It was a magnificent piece of machinery. There's one at the Smithsonian Udvar Hazy Museum right there, and you just look at that and say, wow. Well, I was in General Allen's house one day, and I went in his study, and I was taking him communion, and there's a picture of a blackbird in there. And I said, General, is that a blackbird? I mean, holy cow, wow. And he looks and says, yes. Okay, so I got to ask him another question. Okay, so, and first all I see is the blackbird, and then I notice there's somebody getting out of the blackbird, and the guy's in a flight suit, and he's got a helmet, it sort of looks like the right stuff. Holy cow, General Allen, is that you in the picture with the blackbird? Yes. Nothing, I mean, just yes. General Allen, what the heck was it like? You know, well, it wasn't very impressive, really. It was very mechanical, and you're up so high you didn't really feel your speed. I mean, and it was just, his life was all about other people. His life really was about serving. General Allen was instrumental in ending the Cold War. But you won't hear that about him because it's all behind the scenes. And he wasn't comfortable talking about himself. Contrast that with this day and age where it's all about self. Where it's selfies and this and that, and it's all about self. And look at this age, what we call the greatest generation, and this age where every measure of happiness we have is just plummeting. Where all the measures of happiness are going down. When we think it's, you know, we're richer than we've ever been. We do all the things we've never been able to do. No generation has done all the stuff that we do. We're fitter than we ever have been. We spend more time exercising, and we're less happy than we've ever been. We're more frustrated, more stressed out, angry, irritated, more medications, more alcohol. And so what's the difference? Well, the difference is that the best thing you can do is spend less time on you. The best thing you can do for you is spend less time on you. The best thing I can do for me is spend less time on me. The best thing you can do for your kids is spend less time on your kids. Not with your kids, there's a different thing, but on your kids, making them the perfect little kid who's going to get into the very best college, who's going to reflect on you as a great parent, this and that. No. You know, the best thing that you can do for your family is pour your life out into the life of another family. See, the best thing you can do for you is spend less time on you. Now, not all of you believe that. But again, all the evidence I've ever seen says that's true. My own personal observation says that's true. And when I look here, I know it's true. And I expect that's the same for you. Well, one final illustration, one last set of comments, and we're done. The illustration comes from when I was in Israel. And in Israel, one day we went to the Dead Sea, and there's the Sea of Galilee up here and the Dead Sea down here. Water flows into the Sea of Galilee, out of the Sea of Galilee, flows into the Dead Sea. Nothing flows out of the Dead Sea. And so the Dead Sea is dead. Nothing lives in it. Sea of Galilee, beautiful life all over the place. People on boats on the Sea of Galilee, lush greenery, farms up on the side. Dead Sea, just salt flats, chemicals, you know, nothing. And in Israel, it's a metaphor for life. And what they realize is the Sea of Galilee gives its water and it sustains life. The Dead Sea only gets. All it does is it gets water. And so for them, it's a metaphor of life. When people give, they live. When they just get, they die. They become dead. But it gets even more interesting. Water comes into the Sea of Galilee, goes out of the Sea of Galilee. You would think that would mean there'd be less of the Sea of Galilee, but the Sea of Galilee is about the same size it's always been. The Dead Sea is actually shrinking. So how does that happen? Water's just coming into the Dead Sea. How is it the Dead Sea shrinking? Well, part of it is that they divert water for irrigation, but that's not the real story. The real story is that because no water goes out of the Dead Sea, it all just spreads out, has more surface area, the temperature of the water goes up, and it evaporates at a much greater rate than the Sea of Galilee, and so it evaporates at a greater rate than it's able to sustain, so it's shrinking. You walk all around, you can't walk along the shore because there's all these great big sinkholes. The other thing they tell you in Israel is if you fall through a sinkhole, at least the one redeeming thing is they'll probably name it after you. And so the point is not only is the Dead Sea dead, it's shrinking, it's getting smaller all the time. And the analogy is direct to our lives, is that when we spend all our time trying to consume, acquire, or exercise our way into our happiness, when we all allow our lives to become principally about us, when we spend our time simply on improving us, and believe me, I believe in self-improvement, I believe in exercise, I believe in all these things, but when it just becomes all about us, we will die. We'll smile like everybody else, but inside here, we'll know. There's no hiding ourselves from ourselves. In here, we know something in here has gone dead. And not only will that be the case, we'll continue to shrink and shrink and shrink as we reduce to our own selfish little world instead of the great big world of which we could have been a part if we were willing to volunteer and serve. Well, my final comment is simply to say, I hope that you understand that this is not a sermon where I'm pointing a finger at anybody. Because if there's anybody that gets this, you guys get this. So really, this is just a sermon to say, well done. You are a group of folks who gets this like no other group of people I've ever seen. That's why St. Matthew's is able to do all the things that we're able to do. That's why we're able to help all the people we're able to help in so many circumstances. Over Thanksgiving, there was a great big local church, 20+ thousand people, whatever. They fed 1,000 people for Thanksgiving. Everybody looks at that and says, that looks so great. You know, they gave 1,000 Thanksgiving meals. But we're a church of about 1,000 people, and we fed 100 people. And now that doesn't get much attention, 100 people, big deal. But 100 people to 1,000 people is a much bigger undertaking than 1,000 people to 20,000 people. You guys get it. And I will never, ever, ever be able to say thank you enough or find the words to express what a privilege it is for me to be a part of all this. So thank you. Well done, good and faithful servants. Amen.